Hey everyone, we're just going to give it a couple of seconds for people to join and then we'll get going. Thank you for tuning in this evening and joining, and we'll be with you very shortly. Good evening, Ukaipa. If you haven't met me yet, my name is Graham Smith, and I'm running to be your supervisor for all of us here in San Bernardino County's 3rd District. Thanks so much for tuning in, taking the time to watch the presentation this evening. Just a couple early housekeeping rules. If you've got any questions, please drop them in the chat. We'll answer to stuff as we go. We'll also have a bit more time for some focused Q&A at the end. And in the meantime, we'll kick off. So I said, my name is Graham Smith. And the way I wanted to do this was actually talk a little bit about what the role of county supervisor is. I'm going to give you some background on my professional experience and why I think I'm actually a really good candidate for this job. And I'm also conscious that county supervisor isn't necessarily a household name. It's not a sexy position on the ballot. It is very much an operationally focused position within the county. It's a nonpartisan position. And I'm conscious that a lot of people just don't know what a county supervisor does. So I want to kick off by just giving a bit of background on that. So really breaking it down into four main pockets here: approving the budget, allocating resources, approving legislation, and securing investment. So on the first, county supervisor needs to be financially literate. This county has a budget of $10 billion, so it's pretty big. So you've got to be comfortable dealing with those sums of money and need to know how to manage a budget that big. Big part of this job is allocating resources, whether that's to various incorporated cities within the county, to unincorporated areas in the county, or to the dozens of departments that sit within San Bernardino. Allocating resources among all of those different areas is a huge focus. So what you don't need is necessarily specialist knowledge on each one, but you've got to be able to learn things quickly and figure out which one of those areas needs more resources and maybe which some of them need a bit less. Approving legislation. You're not necessarily crafting too much legislation as a county supervisor. You're more interpreting legislation that comes down from the federal government or the state of California. But it's a pretty important job because San Bernardino is a huge and very diverse place. And what works for someone in Yucaipa might not work for me in the mountains, which might not work for somebody in Redlands. So really taking local feedback into account is a big part of what a supervisor can do to make this job effective. Lastly, securing investment. We'll talk about it later. San Bernardino County, like a lot of counties across the country, get a huge share of their budget through reimbursements from the state of California or the federal government. So the person that sits in this seat needs to know how to go out and pitch San Bernardino County to get that investment, and also pitch San Bernardino County to private industries to bring more business back to the county. So let me tell you a bit about me and my background, and then we'll come back to the roles and how this fits in. So I've had two phases to my career. I've been working about 20 years in total, and most of that was corporate experience in what I'm going to call big finance. So I worked for two companies. My first job out of school was at a bank called Lehman Brothers, and then I spent most of my career at an investment manager called Ares. They're based in LA. I actually spent a decent amount of time working for them in London. And what I did there was I would go out to people, a lot of pension funds. So if you've ever had one of the pensions from one of the public pensions from somewhere like SB Sarah, LA Sarah, or CalPERS, these are the kind of institutions that we would go out and raise money from. So if you're a pension holder from one of those institutions, you've implicitly trusted me and trusted my firm with your retirement before. So what we do is we put that into a pot of money and then figure out how to allocate that money across a bunch of different companies and a bunch of different industries to make things as good as possible. That obviously means making a financial return. It also means creating jobs and just making things more efficient. So really, as I see it, and I'll bring it back to the county supervisor role, some really directly comparable experience that I think is really important for a job like this. And then the next phase of my career, I decided I didn't want to work in corporate work my entire life, so I founded two small businesses. One was a health and fitness app, and the other was a topical CBD brand. And really through those experiences, I learned, one, just how hard small business can be and how hard it is, and two, how hard it is to do small business here in San Bernardino County. I really have a lot of empathy for small business owners, small business employees in San Bernardino County, and a big focus of mine as supervisor is making this environment easier for people. So let's go back to the role of a county supervisor. I want to bring my corporate experience back to this to tell you that I actually think I'm a really, really great candidate for this job. So on the budget, you got to have experience dealing with a $10 billion budget. In my finance career, I invested about $10 billion, and the last company I worked for manages about $400 billion. I know these are crazy sums of money, but that's about 4 times the size of the GDP of this entire county. So when it comes to dealing with numbers of this scale, dealing with budgets, and being able to identify areas of opportunity to save, to invest more money, just do a better job of allocating resources, this is something I'm really comfortable with. Which leads nicely on to actually allocating the county's resources. So I was what was called a generalist in my investing career. That means I looked at companies in all kinds of different industries. This county is made up of dozens of different departments that each do something a little bit different. So I really think the investing experience I had is directly relevant to allocating this county's resources across a bunch of different departments. I think the point on improving legislation that I really want to drive home is that this is a fast-paced environment, and you need to be able to respond to stuff quickly and provide challenge and perspective. If you follow the campaign on social media at all, I hope you'll see this is something I really think I've been doing the entire time. If you're a resident in Yucaipa, you might not be as concerned about this, but certainly in some of the unincorporated parts of the county where we're dealing with, what in some regions is a short-term rental crisis. I have really responded to information that's been put out quickly, talked about it, given firm opinions on this plus many other issues. So, this is something I dealt with day to day in my corporate career and something I think I'm really well placed to deal with as a county supervisor. And last but certainly not least is securing investment. So this was the bread and butter of my job for the better part of 15 years. I know how to go out and pitch people for securing investment, whether that's the state of California, the federal government, or any number of private industries. And I think we have a real area of opportunity to do a much better job of this as a county. So these are all things that are really in my, kind of straight up in my corporate experience. I kind of like to think that I've been training for this job for 15 years without even knowing about it. So I'll pause for a sec just to see if we've got any questions or comments in the chat, and then I want to move on to talking a bit about District 3.
No questions so far, but I'm sure as we go through the presentation, people will have more questions.
Cool. So if you didn't know, as a resident in Yucaipa, District 3 is a huge place. It basically starts at the southwest corner in Redlands, Highland, Loma Linda, cuts up north through the mountain regions where I'm sitting today, up to Barstow, and then all the way over to the Nevada and California border. So San Bernardino is already the country's largest county at 20,000 square miles, and District 3 is about half of that total geography. I also think it's one of the most complicated districts in this county to manage because we have a mix of desert areas, urban areas, and mountain areas like where I am. Like I said, the budget for the county is $10 billion, and one of the key takeaways here is a huge portion of that budget. In fact, the single biggest contributor to our county's annual budget comes through reimbursements from the state of California and the federal government. So we really do rely on that relationship to work well. And kind of touched on it in terms of the different geographies, but one thing that we certainly appreciate, or I certainly appreciate as a resident of a rural part of the county, is the county often tries to implement a one-size-fits-all approach as it relates to things like building permits, small business licenses, just getting businesses open and up and running. And really what works for someone in the city doesn't necessarily work for someone up here in a mountain region like me, which doesn't necessarily work for someone in a desert region. So I think a big part of the role for a county like this is making sure we retain the unique character of each of these different places and making sure we've got smart restrictions, or rather smart kind of building codes and business restrictions in place to make sure that things can operate easily in each one of these places. And that's something I think we can be doing a lot better job of as a county. So I want to talk a bit about my priorities countywide, and then I'll talk a bit more about some of my local priorities, and then I definitely want to hear from you as residents of Yucaipa what's on your mind too. So as it relates to San Bernardino County, this is certainly not an exhaustive list, but it's where I want to start. So financial responsibility. It's hard to go more than 2 weeks in this county without seeing some kind of headline around financial misconduct, alleged corruption. The county's often being sued for one thing or another. I mean, just a couple days ago, there was another lawsuit placed against the county of San Bernardino, a couple other cities, some in San Bernardino, some not, and a developer for homeless accommodation. This is not the first time the county has been embroiled in a scandal or a lawsuit, even relating to homeless funding. And I think a big thing on my agenda is making sure we stop a lot of this waste. This is something I think I'm uniquely qualified as a candidate to be able to actually do. I've got a long career in financial discipline through my investing career, and this is something I'm really confident I can make a difference with. And I think I'm the only candidate who can credibly do that. I think we need to diversify our economy here. I've talked about this a lot, but one of the things I think we're doing as a county is we're putting a lot of our eggs in one basket. And I say that because we've invested hugely in the transport and logistics space. That's had some problems for some of our neighborhoods in terms of warehouses being built right next to schools and churches and right in the middle of neighborhoods. I think it's also going to cause a problem for us because now it's by far the county's single largest employment sector. And these are often jobs that are first in line to be replaced by robots and automated technology. And this is happening already. And I think by investing so much in this one sector, I think we're setting ourselves up for a real area of exposure if something takes a turn. So a real focus of mine is finding ways to bring in other businesses to San Bernardino County and starting to diversify our economy. Again, this is something I think compared to other candidates I'm uniquely qualified to do just because I've got a huge business network through my investing career, both to my former firm and to plenty of others. And in total, that network is in the trillions of dollars of companies. So in terms of being able to go out and pitch San Bernardino to private industry to find more to bring here, this is something I'm really qualified to do. I also think our relationship with the state and federal government isn't in a great space right now. You may or may not be familiar with the measure that was put on the ballot last election cycle to study secession from the state of California. I want to say that regardless of where you fell personally on this issue, I think the underlying ethos was correct in terms of we as a county want to find ways to get more resources from the state of California. This is of course important because it's our single biggest source of funding. But I think the problem with this approach is San Bernardino County is such a tiny share of California's overall economy that the threat to leave is a pretty empty threat. And just by making it, we've already strained what was already kind of a tenuous relationship between the county of San Bernardino and the state of California. So I'm way more focused on finding some positive ways to secure funding from the state, and I've got some real ideas about how we can do that. And lastly, I think we need to restore trust between the county and its residents. Certainly as a resident of an unincorporated part of San Bernardino County, we really feel this on a daily basis. It's not uncommon here, whether you're in the mountains or in the desert, for residents to feel like the county just doesn't have your back. I think we need better communication, more transparency. In Yucaipa, you obviously have a local city council, so you might feel a bit more directly connected to your local government. But certainly, as it relates to residents outside of the cities who rely directly on the county as their main form of local government, that relationship is pretty strained right now, and I think we have a big job to do to repair it. So why don't I pause here for a second and move on to some local priorities and just see if we've got any questions or comments in the chat.
Yeah, so just for everyone who's watching, this disembodied voice is Mark. I'm Graham's husband and campaign manager. I'm working behind the scenes with the computer and stuff. This question isn't in the chat, but we've had a lot of people from Yucaipa commenting on our Facebook and Instagram posts, asking about whether you're a Democrat or a Republican and how that plays into your role as county supervisor and how you want to handle that.
Sure. So you heard the question. We've had a lot of people in Yucaipa ask what my party preference is. This is something I put out a video on social media a couple days ago because we've been getting this question a lot. I mean, I want to start off by saying this seat is nonpartisan for a reason, right? It shouldn't be a political agenda to want better local infrastructure and better local services. That shouldn't be a Democrat or Republican thing. I mean, I am personally registered as a Democrat and I have support of the party, but one thing that's really important is there are a lot of Republican values that I also subscribe to. Things like small government, staying out of people's way, just the freedom to as an individual do what you want. And these are all things that are really part of my personal value system. And I also think these are things that currently our overwhelmingly Republican board isn't really delivering that well on. And I say that because as a resident here in a rural part of the county, it's really not an uncommon thing to want to move up to the mountains and kind of be able to do your own thing and have the government stay out of your way. I've talked before about there's a restaurant down the road that has been struggling to open for 3 years because of all the red tape and all the permitting. Like that doesn't seem like a small government promise at all to me. So one of the things on my agenda is really just to try to make life a bit easier for people here and to reduce some of that government red tape. And again, you can call that a core Republican belief if you want. I think it's the right thing to do as it relates to the relationship between a local government and the population here. It's like, do your job and then get out everyone's way. That is really a firm belief of mine. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the local priorities, and these are geared more toward life in cities. So I'm really keen to hear from more residents of Yucaipa around what you guys want to see. One thing that's not on here I know is important is preserving some of the rural character of Yucaipa. I know there's been a lot of drama between city council and some of the mobile home parks. We've heard about issues where residents are being kicked out so that some of these parks can get redeveloped into apartments. I think there's a lot to unpack there and talk about. One thing I want you to know is this is something that we have a vested interest in, trying to make sure we do the best job of, and I want you to know as a resident of Yucaipa that we are listening, and your opinion really matters. In terms of some other city priorities in San Bernardino County, I talked a little bit about warehouses. I think they have been a huge area of economic growth for San Bernardino County, but they're also now creating this big area of economic exposure. So, of course, I want to diversify the overall economy. I also want to use our dominance in the warehouse transport and logistics space to start bringing about some positive change in San Bernardino County. You might not know already, but we have the very worst air quality ranking in the entire United States, like literally #1, top of the list. A big part of that, some of that is geography. A big part of that is all of the NOx emissions that come from diesel trucks that come in and out of warehouses. And these warehouses are being built right in the middle of neighborhoods. So one thing I want to do is use that dominance to bring about some change in terms of starting to electrify some of these trucks, installing some renewable energy on warehouse roofs. This is actually something that we should be doing already as stipulated per, it's called the South Coast Air Quality Management District, and most warehouses aren't in compliance today. I also think this is an important area to highlight the strained relationship between the county of San Bernardino and the state of California. And if we do some interesting things like this, I do think we're going to have better luck securing funding from the state of California for this kind of investment. Crime, I know, is a real issue. I mean, really, crime, homelessness, and affordable housing, I think, in my mind, are all linked together. So, reduction in crime. I think this comes down to making sure we have a sheriff's department, police forces that are well funded, and well resourced in order to respond to issues as they arise. I think. It's also important that we, I know, again, back to the point of these being interlinked, I think we need to start addressing the homelessness issue in this county more effectively. I mean, earlier last year, the Board of Supervisors allocated over $70 million to spend on the homelessness crisis here. Well, what's happened is they started spending money, and then homelessness still managed to creep up. It wasn't until recently that they set up another board to understand the root causes of homelessness. So this is something I'm really committed to doing, making sure we understand a problem and making sure our resources are being spent effectively. Same thing goes for affordable housing. I think this comes down to better use of financial resources. I mentioned the lawsuit that's just been brought against the county recently. This county has previously returned federal homeless funding because it wasn't spent properly. Like, we need to do a much better job of managing our finances here. I also think with affordable housing, there are some ways that we can make this a little bit easier in terms of fast track approvals, mixed use zoning. I mean, there are a bunch of things that we can do that I think we need to evaluate to make sure that we're coming at this problem from absolutely every angle. Okay, next I'm going to move and talk a bit more about just who I am as a person and individual, just so you get to know me a little bit and know why I'm doing this. So I was born and raised outside of LA in a neighborhood called Topanga Canyon, if anyone's ever heard of that. But I've had a lifelong connection to San Bernardino County, and in particularly to District 3, where all of us sit here. So I'm talking to you from the living room of a cabin my grandparents built 50 years ago. It's now where we live full time. So I've been coming to this very house for my entire life. We've also got a family campsite out in Lucerne Valley, which again I've been going to my entire life. Learned to rock climb with my dad in Joshua Tree. Learned to ski down the road at Snow Valley. So District 3 has been a part of my life, the entire time I've been alive. But I haven't I haven't always lived here, and I think that's a really important point to bring home as it relates to some of the diverse experiences, both life and work experiences, that I bring to this role. So I talked a bit about what my corporate job was, but a big part of that was spent living and working in London. So at this point, I've lived abroad for 12 years of my life. I've been to 50 countries. I've done business in 5 continents. So I really bring a breadth of both work and life experience to this role that I don't think you're seeing from anyone else. And I think that breadth of experience is really important, because when it comes down to providing perspective and challenge on various issues across the county, having that perspective is really helpful. So I studied at USC. I mean, I've done business. I studied finance and accounting, and I've been a business person for most of my career. So again, really a core skill set that is really helpful to this role. And outside of that, I'm just a normal guy. I like to cook. I like to tinker in my workshop. I am not your typical politician. So on that note, I've never in a million years thought that I would be running for public office. I've never had any aspirations to be a politician. This is never part of my life plan. I mean, really, I'm doing this because when we moved to San Bernardino County full-time, I've seen the huge number of ways in which the county has made life difficult for residents here, whether that's local stuff where we are in the mountains, like trash pickup, improving your house, opening a small business. And then for me, and for not just for me, but for all of us residents up here in the mountains, if you read the news last winter, you saw that we all got buried under 10 or 12 feet of snow in a week. We were personally stuck in our house for about 2 weeks. And really the county, I got really involved locally because we weren't hearing anything from the county in terms of communication around what they were doing, in terms of what resources they were sending up. So that's when I got really involved. I actually I had to lead a whole social media campaign just to get the attention of the Board of Supervisors. I led a big neighborhood Zoom call, really got us some more resources, some more attention. And that was the first time where I kind of thought to myself, you know what, I actually think I've got something valuable to add here. And I think the county could use some assistance. So I'm going to sum up quickly and just mention, if you've got any questions in the chat, put them in now, because there's a 20-second delay between me talking and actually getting the questions through. So just on me, I do think I'm the most qualified candidate to do this job. I've got a heavy background in finance and corporate work. I mean, actually, one thing I haven't talked about yet is a big aspect of the professional career I used to do was the fact that it was very political. So this is, even though I haven't been in public office before, this is a job I will do really well. I think every department in this county will benefit from the skill set that I bring to the table. Like, so this county is made up of dozens of departments, so specialist skills are not necessarily required. And the core skill set I bring to the table is knowing how to efficiently allocate resources among all these different departments. So again, this is something I can do really well. I think I've proven, if you've followed the campaign on social media, I'm the only candidate who's actually commented on any real issues and addresses these issues with any kind of urgency. It's something, one of the things I'm really trying to do with the social media platform is give you as a voter some insight into how I think, how I'll behave, so that when elected to the seat, you know exactly what to expect. And lastly, I touched on this before, District 3 is so big with so many different places. We've got cities, mountain, desert, and even that is a gross oversimplification of all the regions we have in this county. But in terms of being able to empathize and understand with the various challenges that residents across this district face, I think I'm really well placed to do that. I live in an unincorporated part of San Bernardino County where the county does not make life easy. So even though the issues you might face in Yucaipa aren't the same ones that I face up on the mountain, I know that life can be difficult, and I know that the solution is not necessarily one for everybody. I think we need to be taking local feedback into account and coming up with smart legislation and smart solutions that make everyone's lives a little bit easier. So that's me and the platform in a nutshell. We'll pause here to see if we've got any questions in the chat.
No, everyone's pretty quiet in the chat today. So yeah, this is probably worth mentioning. This is the first session that we're doing for Yucaipa.
It is.
So as word kind of spreads, hopefully more people from the area will join. Let me just quickly double check when the next one is. So the next session for UKIPA is going to be on Wednesday, January 24th. That's January 24th. That's a Wednesday from 5 o'clock till 6. So yeah, if you got something out of this presentation, then please let other people know that they will have a chance to join another session live, or they can watch this session again either on Facebook or YouTube. We'll repost it. But yeah, no extra questions for tonight.
Okay. Well, everyone, thank you so much for your time, for listening to what we have to say. To Mark's point, I mean, one of the most helpful things you can do is just spread the word, let your friends and family know, have them watch either one of these sessions or follow the campaign on social media. We are Smith for SB on pretty much every social platform that you've got. And of course, this is a completely grassroots campaign. We're not taking any corporate donations. So if any of this message has resonated with you, then anything you can do to support the campaign is really, really helpful. There's a QR code on the last slide here, and we've also got a link on the website, which is smithforsb.com. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining tonight. I'll say good night and let you get on with your evening. All right, UKIPA, take care.